Okay, so what if everything you perceive right now, I mean everything, the sights, the sounds, even the very chair you're sitting on, what if it's all just a meticulously maintained illusion?
That's a wild thought.
It really is. And I'm not talking about some, philosophical parlor trick. Think more like the Truman Show. But instead of a TV network running the show, the whole illusion is being manufactured inside your own skull.
And that is exactly the truly provocative idea coming out of modern neuroscience right now. It's exhilarating, really. We're moving beyond just speculation.
Okay.
We're getting into the math, the biology of consciousness. People like Professor Anil Seth, they argue that our entire perception of reality and even our sense of self is a construct.
So the brain isn't just recording the outside world.
Not at all. Its main job is to construct a useful, predicted universe. The colors, the sounds, the feelings, it's all part of the show it's putting on for you.
That is exactly our mission today. We're taking a deep dive into the source material that lays out these foundations for this pretty radical theory.
We're talking about the free energy principle, FEP.
And its application, predictive processing, or PP. But we're not just stopping with the theory. We're going to apply it to some pretty surprising things, like how psychedelics can temporarily dismantle the very core of what it means to be you.
Before we get into all the heavy machinery, though, we should probably define our terms.
That's a good idea.
So when we say consciousness, we're not talking about some mystical, ethereal thing. The sources are really clear on this. Consciousness is just any kind of subjective experience whatsoever.
The feeling of being you.
Exactly. The hard question science is finally tackling is how that feeling, that movie theater in your mind, emerges from this, damn fatty organ made of cells. We're looking at these deeply experiential questions through the lens of computation and biology.
Okay, let's unpack this. If reality is a controlled hallucination, what's the most accessible piece of evidence we have for that? The proof that what we perceive is an internal construction.
Well, we don't have to look any further than our own senses. The brain, at all times, is basically a prediction machine.
A prediction machine?
Yeah. It's constantly generating its best guess about what's causing all the sensory noise it's receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Perception isn't passive. It's this active process of prediction error minimization.
So you guess what's out there, you check the data, and if you're wrong...
If there's a mismatch, a prediction error, the whole system scrambles to update the prediction. It wants to minimize that surprise.
And this is why optical illusions work so well, right? The brain locks onto a prior belief that's usually helpful, and when the data is ambiguous, it confidently picks the wrong answer.
Precisely. And the cultural touchstone for this, the one everyone remembers, is #TheDress from back in 2015.
Oh, yeah, the blue and black versus white and gold.
You had two people looking at the exact same image, and one was absolutely convinced it was blue and black. The other swore it was white and gold.
The actual light hitting their retinas was identical, but the experience was completely different. It was sort of public proof that our brains are not reliable witnesses.
It showed that these perceptual experiences are purely internal. They're shaped by the idiosyncrasies of our own biology, our own history.
So what was happening there with the dress?
For the people who saw white and gold, their brain's generative model, think of it as their internal rulebook for the world. It just decided there must be a yellowish light source washing out the colors.
So it subtracts that assumption.
It subtracts the yellow, and voila, it reveals what it thinks are the true colors, white and gold. But the people who saw blue and black,
they had a different assumption baked in.
They did. Their brains were maybe primed to adjust for the bluer light of a sunny day, a common outdoor prior. So they subtracted blue, and the image resolved as blue and black.
The crucial thing here, as the sources point out, is that the dress doesn't have the property of blueness or goldness.
Not in the way it has mass, no. Color is not a physical property. It's a complex technicolor production by our brains, designed to tell us something useful about the surfaces of objects.
So if the brain is inventing color, inventing shape, the whole survival link becomes pretty clear. We don't perceive the world as it is.
But as it is useful for us to perceive it, it's an engineered interface. It's designed to maximize our chances of staying alive.
It's an adaptive illusion.
That's the evolutionary imperative. This generated reality lets us operate quickly, efficiently, avoid danger, find food, all without having to solve the nearly infinite math problem of what the world truly is at every single moment.
And this predictive activity, it's not just some helpful trick. It's driven by something much deeper.
It's driven by the most fundamental mathematical principle for all living things, the free energy principle, or FEP. Right. The FE basically states that any living system, from a single cell all the way up to us, has to minimize surprisal or expected surprise if it wants to continue existing.
That word surprisal, it sounds super technical, but in terms of survival, it's actually pretty intuitive.
Absolutely. Think of surprisal as the cost of being disastrously wrong.
Yeah.
So let's say your brain predicts your body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius.
Okay. No.
Now imagine it gets sensory input that says the temperature is 800 degrees. That is maximally surprising. That level of surprise is incompatible with your current state of being, your phenotype.
And therefore incompatible with life.
Exactly. The FEP is the iron law that says to survive, you have to predict your world well enough that you are never, ever maximally surprised.
So the brain's job is basically risk management. Keep the unexpected from becoming catastrophic. But how does it do that mathematically? Especially since we said calculating the true probability of everything is, well, intractable.
It uses a shortcut, an optimized approximation process called approximate Bayesian inference.
So back to the cheat code.
It's a high-speed adaptive cheat code, yeah. It relies on two crucial internal probability functions. First, you've got the generative model, or G density.
The brain's internal textbook.
That's a good way to put it. It models how hidden things in the world, like a hot stove, correlate with the sensations you actually feel, like heat.
Okay, so that's part one. The textbook, what's the second part?
That's the recognition density, or R density. This is the organism's current hypothesis. It's the moment-to-moment best guess about what's actually happening out there right now, based on the senses.
And the goal is to make the guess match the textbook.
Right. And what FEP shows is that by minimizing this thing called free energy, you are, by extension, minimizing surprisal. You're successfully aligning your hypothesis with your textbook and with the world. And by doing that, you successfully maintain your existence.
This brings us to a really interesting point of contention that the sources tackle, which is the criticism about the Markov blanket. So initially, critics said FEP was too niche. It only applied to systems that had this really hard, definable boundary, a Markov blanket separating the thing from its environment.
And that was a serious challenge. I mean, for FEP to be a fundamental principle of life, the idea of having a boundary that defines you as a coherent thing has to be equally fundamental.
So what was the rebuttal? What did the math show?
The rebuttal was really powerful. Recent work showed that as systems get more and more complex, they will all eventually have something like a Markov blanket, or at least a soft blanket.
So it's not a niche feature, it's an emergent property of complexity.
Exactly, which is a huge boost for FEP because it formalizes what it means to be a thing, physically speaking. To exist as a distinct entity, you have to maintain a boundary, a gradient, against the chaos of the environment.
Okay, so if the brain is doing all this incredible work just to predict the outside world, what kind of machinery is running just to predict ourselves?
And that's the key pivot, right?
Yeah.
We shift from the external world to interoceptive inference.
Right.
This is the idea that our deepest bodily states, our heart rate, hormones, gut feelings, they aren't regulated by simple feedback. They're regulated by descending predictions coming from deep inside the brain.
The brain is predicting what the heart should be doing next.
It's literally predicting it.
And this is where the framework just completely upends our common sense ideas about emotion. The traditional story is, see a bear, feel fear, then heart pounds. The feeling causes the physical reaction.
But the sources, following people like Anil Seth, they flip that completely on its head.
How so?
They suggest the emotion is actually a perception. It's a response to the mind's perception of those bodily reactions. We are fearful because we perceive our heart is racing and our muscles are tensing up.
So the brain predicts the internal state needed for survival, time to run, it generates the physical changes, and then it perceives those changes and slaps the label fear on the whole experience.
Precisely. To guide future behavior. Our feelings, our sense of agency, even free will. They are all controlled hallucinations, high-level perceptions created by the mind to manage the biological machine.
But if our agency is just a controlled hallucination for the sake of control, does that mean free will is gone? How do the sources handle that philosophical minefield?
They don't get rid of it, but they reframe it in a pretty dramatic way. Free will, in this context, isn't some supernatural choice that's separate from physics.
What is it then?
It's the most sophisticated, highest-level form of prediction error minimization. Our brain models itself as an agent that can make choices, because that model leads to better long-term prediction and control. The illusion of agency is deeply adaptive.
A system that feels it's in control is better at surviving.
Much better.
So if the whole point of this self model is control, what's the core process it's trying to regulate over the long haul?
That process is allostasis. Most people have heard of homeostasis, right? Maintaining a fixed set point.
Like your body temperature?
Exactly. Allostasis is much more advanced. It's the anticipatory control that regulates the body's needs over longer timescales. The self-model emerges because the organism needs what's called prospective action selection.
Can you give us an example of allostasis that someone might experience?
Oh, definitely. Think about chronic stress or even a caffeine addiction. Your body isn't just reacting to low blood sugar right now. The allostatic self-model builds this high-level prediction of how much energy and alertness you need to meet the demands of your life.
So it predicts you need to be on all the time for your job.
Right. And if that prediction includes chronic high cortisol or a daily dose of caffeine to maintain that state, the system will descend that high-level prediction, even if it's bad for you long-term. The sense of self is what stitches all those long-term predictions together.
Which leads to this incredible conclusion. Descartes called animals beast machines.
He did.
But this science suggests the opposite. Our subjective experiences of self, of agency, of emotion, they arrive because of the fact that we too are fundamentally beast machines. Incredibly complex, predictive, cybernetic systems just trying to regulate themselves.
It grounds our deepest, most personal experiences in this very elegant biological mechanics.
So, if the self is this meticulously built, adaptive thing, what happens when you throw a wrench in the works? When you radically disrupt it? I'm talking about psychedelic-induced ego dissolution.
Deity, yeah. Characterized by that loss of boundaries between self and world.
How does this framework explain that?
This is where predictive processing gets really insightful. We use the rebus model, that's relaxed beliefs under psychedelics. The core idea is that these compounds relax those very high-level, very entrenched beliefs.
Beliefs about the self, about control, about how reality is supposed to be structured.
All of it. And in computational terms, relaxing those beliefs is the same as cranking up the Bayesian learning rate.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, normally your high-level beliefs exert this massive top-down constraint on all the sensory data coming in. That's what gives you a stable reality.
It keeps things from getting too weird.
Exactly. When you adopt a very high learning rate, that constraint it vanishes. The system is suddenly hypersensitive to every little prediction error. Incoming sensory data gets weighted incredibly heavily.
Which sounds like the sensory overload people describe.
It is. The system starts to overfit the sensory data. It's trying to fit a model to every single flicker of input on a very, very short timescale. It's like trying to rebuild your entire model of the world every half second.
And why does that cause the self to break down?
Because the self model is, by its very nature, a multi-time scale model. It's built on predictions that span decades, your career, your relationships. A high learning rate causes a collapse in that temporal thickness.
If you can't predict yourself a minute from now, the whole thing falls apart.
The whole stable architecture just temporarily dissolves. And this is experienced as the loss of perceptual mindness, that background feeling that my thoughts and experiences are mine.
That loss of those rigid beliefs also points to the therapeutic potential, which is explained by the Tiber model.
The Tiber model, right. It suggests that many psychopathologies, depression, anxiety, addiction, might be caused by overly precise, rigid, high-level beliefs.
For example,
Well, a person with depression might have this unshakable belief of low allostatic self-efficacy, a core prediction that they are fundamentally incapable of making effective change, and that prior is so strong it resists all new evidence.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
So the ego dissolution acts as a kind of a reset, a temporary sledgehammer.
It's a reset, precisely. It temporarily lowers the rigidity of those crippling beliefs, making them lose their top-down grip. The system becomes plastic again, open to revision from the bottom up. It opens up new possibilities, allowing the self-model to restructure.
So we've gone from this philosophical idea of reality as a hallucination down into the deep math of the free energy principle, and now we've seen how this incredibly adaptive self-model can be dissolved and reset just by shifting the brain's learning rate.
And the core takeaway for you, listening to this, is that understanding yourself, your feelings, your identity, it's synonymous with understanding the machinery the brain uses to predict and control what it needs to for survival. Even the most profound spiritual aspects of your consciousness are grounded in this relentless cybernetic regulation.
So if the core function of the self-model is anticipation and control across all these different timescales, What happens when we intentionally target those high-level beliefs, not just for therapy, but to explore the very boundary between the self and the world? If the brain's purpose is to find the best model of reality, is that radical exploration itself the ultimate form of prediction error minimization? You now have the formal language to explore that question for yourself.